SaveWithConrad.com.
Eric Ward in Franklin, Tennessee. I first heard about Save with Conrad through a couple wrestling broadcasts I listened to. 83 Weeks and What Happened When with Tony Schiavone, and I decided to reach out, and I'm so glad that I did. It was an absolute fabulous process. I was in a transition mode, recently sold a home, and I was looking for a mortgage on a new home purchase. And Diana and the team at Supreme Lending was there to help me out. They were absolutely fabulous to work with. They were knowledgeable, responsive, and made the process incredibly smooth. And I'll tell you this, the online portal was an absolute game changer. It provided regular updates at every step, giving me full visibility into where we were at in the process. And on closing day, everything moved so fast that even my real estate agent was shocked. I'm telling you, I couldn't have been happier with the experience and would highly recommend Save with Conrad to anyone looking for a seamless mortgage process. I'm Eric Ward from Franklin, Tennessee, and I got into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, Connie. I'm in Oklahoma for another few days, and before I head back to Jacksonville. So things are good, though. I'm staying busy as I want to be, and I'm excited about getting back to Jacksonville for a couple of days. And moving on, brother, moving on. So it's all good. Life is good.
Life is good.
I feel good. I feel healthy. So, it's all kind of what you're looking for at this stage of the game for me. Just have another day of feeling good. And I am feeling good today. So we'll have fun doing this show. It's a hell of a pay-per-view to talk about. It was very popular and did very well. And of course, as you and I were talking before we went on the air, the Hardys and it was Hardys and Edge and Christian.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. We should mention our topic today is No Mercy 1999, but there's just so much going on in the WWF. I don't even know that we can fit it all inside of one show. Just to be clear, this is actually the second pay-per-view that the WWF did in 1999 called No Mercy. There was a UK only pay-per-view, but we're actually talking about the American pay-per-view that happened in October of 1999. And boy, what a crazy time it was to think 25 years ago this month is when Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara, two guys who were largely responsible for some of the television shows that we had been seeing through the WWE, at least the writing aspect, they just abruptly quit the promotion and signed with WCW over the weekend. It was the first weekend of October. And Dave Meltzer said this: Russo in various interviews cited the burnout factor of working so many hours with the added stress of the SmackDown show as the main component of his approaching WCW, first through J.J. Dillon, and then closing the 2-year deal after lengthy meetings with Bill Bush on October 2nd, signing the contract in Atlanta the next morning. He stated on WrestleLine that he was drained from being on call 24 hours a day for nearly 3 years, and that he needed to spend more time with his family. This is big news. How do you first hear that Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara are gone?
I think Vince said they were taking off and going to move to Atlanta and do their business there. So I can understand Russo's logic. I mean, they were working a lot of time. They should have added more staff. He should have added more staff, I think, in hindsight.
Yeah.
To his staff, to his group, it would have maybe eased the burden of his workload. But those guys did work. They had a lot of balls in the air. So I think Vince told me. But we didn't miss a beat. We just kept on rolling, and it worked out fine at the end of the day. I mean, look where WWE is today, and they're doing very well, obviously. So at the end of the day, things generally work out if everybody's on the same page. And they got Vince back more engaged, and I think that was a good thing at that point in time. So it was still a little bit surprising I would have thought that they would have come to some sort of happy compromise prior to the final decision being made that both Russo and Ferrara left. But, we had a lot of people on staff that could do their job. They might not do it as well. I don't know. That's all subjective. But it was an interesting time, to say the least. But I thought that the company reacted positively. And I thought that, the results of this show we're going to talk about today is evidence of that, we had some depth, and we had some, we had people there that Patterson and Bruce, myself to a lesser degree, and and Vince, of course. So it was pretty good. And we had some talents coming into their own. The tag match of the Hardys and Edge and Christian was extraordinary. So that bailed our ass out of that show.
Well,
so it was good. It was good.
What do you remember Vince's reaction being to the news that, he had two guys who had been a big part of the success behind the scenes? We've often talked about Vince's reaction when, something with Jeff Jarrett or Lex Luger or, Medusa or one of these big acts show up on another channel. We've talked about that before, but I don't know that we've spent a lot of time talking about Russo's exit. How did Vince react to that news?
I think he was surprised, and not in a pleasant way. That's a nice shot there of Michael Cole on the left, and the boss, Ferrara and Russo. And they did a nice job. They got, the results speak for themselves. But they just were burned out, and they tagged out too late. I mean, they got to the end of their rope, unfortunately. And a lot of the talents were concerned because they had built relationships with Russo and Ferrara. They had a source for creative. They had a resource, I should say. So it was surprising, surprising that they left. I didn't see them on the way out. I just know that it was a surprise and not a pleasant one, because there were two main players that we had to replace in key roles, and didn't have any time to regroup because we had another show to do, which we're going to talk about today. So it was a interesting time for us there at WWE.
What's interesting to me is just the timing of all this. As I understand it, the meeting happens on October 2nd. He signs the contract on October 3rd. He's supposed to start TV on October 11th. That'll be his first day reporting to work. And that's going to be like 8 days before the WWE goes public, or WWF at the time. It does feel like, to me, of all the times to jump ship, I don't know that I would jump ship before the IPO. It feels like you might have some leverage and have an opportunity to make some more money, or at least have a conversation with Vince. And I believe Russo had tried to express his frustration before. And I think to hear Russo tell it, something along the lines of the straw that broke the camel's back was that when he was complaining about not having time with the family and so forth, Vince said something like, "You make enough money, hire a nanny." Because of course Russo had been writing Raw, and now he felt like he had SmackDown dumped in his lap, and that meant twice as much work, which meant twice as much time away from the family. He just didn't think he could do that. And I guess that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Vince, Russo rather. But it does feel like, to me, man, we're just days away from an IPO.
Yeah. Not good timing on Russo's part.
Yeah.
Because I can promise you that he'd have gotten stock.
Right. Probably a lot.
Yeah. I got a lot. It came in handy. I mean, it's 6-figure deals, and a lot of stock, but it was also new to all of us. I wasn't really sure what I had. I didn't realize how good I had it, because I was not a stock guy, and but it was interesting, as I said, interesting times. Russo and those guys, maybe if they look back at it, he'd have stayed another week or so and let the company go public. And then right after the company went public, Vince started doling out stock. I know Kevin Dunn and I got a ton of it. And
I just feel like Russo would have too. And by the way, at the time, the stock was opening at a $30 price. That was the original IPO, $30.50. And now today, as you and I are recording, TKO stock is at 128.5. I mean, it's just a gargantuan amount of cash that I feel like maybe Russo left on the table without, if you remove that IPO piece of business, or maybe you were even thinking about that back then. What did you think of the decision that Russo and Ferrara made to leave the WWF, who by October of 99, boy, they're clearly in the driver's seat in these Monday Night Wars, to go to take off the winning team jersey and put on the losing team jersey, for lack of a different term? It's a head scratcher to me. What do you make of that decision?
I'm with you on that deal. It was also a head scratcher to me. Like I said, in hindsight, if they'd have hung around for a little bit longer, they'd have found themselves some new money. And we all love new money, no matter as long as it's not illegal. That's kind of what we go for. And it was a brand new concept. Pro wrestling and stock just never went together before. And of course, subsequently, as you pointed out, the stock now is out the wall. I still got stock. Someday I'll sell some of it. Maybe sooner than later. Hell, I don't know. But it was really challenging. And I think all of us are just kind of how we're going to regroup. I'm sure Bruce has stories about that as well. But it was good. It sometimes change doesn't always have to be negative. And there's a lot of people in this world that believe that, any change is bad. And I don't concur with that whatsoever. It's just, it gives you a chance to set the timer, the clock or whatever, and start over, get a fresh look, fresh set of eyes, shall we say. But, they did a great job while they were there, no doubt, but they just got burned out and they didn't raise their hand soon enough. I feel confident that Vince probably would have helped them out a little bit. Like I said, they just need more staff. They're two guys, and they may have made it harder than they needed to. I don't know. They may have overreacted. That's all up to opinion. So it was a changing times, but when times change, you just got to come back and make it better. And I think that if you look at the results of today, it got better and it stayed better. It had ups and downs and highs and lows, but at the end of the day, it was pretty successful.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I just as a reminder, and I know these days in 2024, everybody has their own opinion of Vince Russo. But what I do want to mention is how even a guy like Dave Meltzer was writing about Russo 25 years ago. He says Russo's in a unique position to cement his reputation. He was the key writer in the turnaround of Raw, which fueled all other aspects of the business, which took the WWF from the verge of bankruptcy and averaging a 2.4 rating on Raw in 1997 to where the rating has hovered at better than a 6.0 average for the same show the past few months. And the company's a $56 million profit last year and an expected windfall from the IPO. So he's talking about just the incredible turnaround that the company had. And he's wondering how much of this is Vince Russo. Of course, we're all going to find out. And Meltzer had more details. He says this meeting that happened in Atlanta with Vince Russo and Bill Bush, these negotiations, lasted about 10 hours. And then Russo picked up the phone and called McMahon, who's coming back from the England pay-per-view. And about 10 minutes later, that news is already on the WWF website. It's a total shock to the industry that there is a switch here. And I know there was a large contingent of folks in WCW who felt like, hey, we're getting the secret sauce. We're getting the secret to their success. Did you have concerns that Russo and Ferrara would go to WCW and turn their creative and subsequently their business around?
Not really, honestly. Where else are you going to go? if you're going to stay in the wrestling business, there was only one more option. So I wasn't really totally shocked about that. They went back to what they knew, and unfortunately for us at that time, it was new, meaning they're going to get replaced. Somebody's got to do those jobs, and so it worked out. It worked out in the long haul. I guess they got good. I'm sure they got good contracts. I'm sure they're making some good cash, which is good for them and their families. But I think if they look back at it, and they might not admit it, but they had a chance to cash in on some of that stock, and that's just brand new cash, man. And you don't want to turn those deals down. But I don't know how versed they were in the educational aspect of what getting stock options meant, and they didn't know the man. I had no idea. I got a ton of stock, and so did Kevin Dunn. We got the most of anybody, but that was talent and television.
Right.
That's Vince's two loves, and I was handling the talent side, and Kevin Dunn was handling the television side. So it was just a unknown. How are we going to do now? I never felt like it was ever a two-man show. I mean, it's just the company's too big to two guys to do all that stuff, and it makes sense. So, point being is that I felt at the end of the day everything would work out. And like I said, we had talented people that were working directly with Vince, like Bruce and others, Patterson. That's the same. That's the old writing team.
Yeah.
So them going back to getting their pencils sharpened and putting down on paper what they want to do what we want to do at a TV show could be facilitated, and it was facilitated. So, but still, it was a surprise. Everybody was comfortable, and I think those guys felt like maybe they were at the end of their creative peak. So, but they did what they thought was right, and it was right for them and their families, and I'm sure Bill Bush gave them a good deal because they were perceived as as you said, Connie, the secret sauce.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, without me sounding like a turd, no two guys are the secret sauce of a company that large. If there was a secret sauce in WWE, it was Vince, and he wasn't going nowhere.
Well said. Well, Russo would go out at the time and say, hey, this wasn't a financial decision. He's only making a little bit more with WCW than he would with the WWE, which really makes, with the benefit of hindsight, him leaving right before the IPO a head scratcher. I can't help but think that, because I like Vince Russo, but I can't help but think that at the time he made an emotional decision. Because I think if you were to remove the emotions from that, and I know that has to be hard when your boss says, hey, go hire a nanny to raise your family. I get why he would have a reaction to that, but
sure,
with the benefit of hindsight, I'm going to leave the winning team that's about to go public and it's getting a second big time show that I know is going to enjoy massive success. And I could probably cash in on that. Now, maybe I was rebuffed at first, but that sure beats the heck out of going to a team that I'm not even sure is going to survive the downward spiral they're in.
Yeah.
With the benefit of hindsight, I don't think Russo would have made that jump. Do you think he would?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think the opportunity to create new cash for your family that you're so concerned about would have changed his mind. Like I said, that area just needed to be restructured a little bit, and that would mean new bodies and new ideas, and they could still be, they meaning Russo and Ferrara, could still be in their command positions and be the offensive coordinator, so shall we say. And speaking of that, we just fired our offensive coordinator this week, former alumnus, former head coach at North Texas, Seth Luttrell, a good friend of mine, and he got canned, and I was very shocked at that. Even though we weren't playing very well offensively, we just don't have the players right now, and we're not SEC ready. So I don't expect us to, we might win one more game. I think we'll beat Maine, the Maine Black Bears of D'Lo Brown alumnus. So, it was time for a change. And if we'd have handled the change a little bit more judiciously and with better timing, a lot of this discussion would not be happening.
Let's talk a little bit about the idea that this could even happen. Here's what was written in the Observer at the time. Russo and Ferrara, who were both working without contracts with the WWF, which was a stunning oversight, apparently because Vince McMahon was of the belief they weren't a threat to leave, despite many people suggesting to WCW that they hire Russo to write television. And I know that there have been times where people have laid shit at your door based on someone's contract expiring and them having an opportunity to jump ship, but that was always for on-screen, on-camera talent. This is someone who works behind the scenes. Was there any uncomfortable conversations with you and Vince about these cats not having contracts, or did he understand it's not JR's lane?
Not really. It was still a surprise, and it's still an unnecessary change. But they had pretty well made their minds up that they were going to bolt and explore the waters elsewhere, specifically in Atlanta, WCW. So, no, I just think that they left prematurely.
Who inside WWE would have been responsible for making those contracts happen with the Russo and Ferrara? Okay.
McMahon.
Okay.
I didn't know they didn't have a contract.
I got you.
I didn't delve into that shit, and I had enough on my plate as opposed to adding more.
So someone else handled operations. You handled the in-ring roster.
That's right.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, well, it's still McMahon's call.
Right.
He knew they either had a contract or they didn't have a contract. Many of us were not aware of it, but they should have had a contract, and it just didn't work out that way. That was bad management on everybody's part. Russo and Ferrara should have been essentially demanding a new deal. They gave them some security and a little bit of time off. And we're making enough money that we could afford to add the staff to help those guys, but that didn't happen either. So it's fumbled along the way somewhat significantly. And it got to the point where they just said, hell, we can't do this. We can't continue to, neglect our families through this whole process. And that's kind of what they came to. That was the deal. So anyhow, it was a surprising thing, Connie. It was just a surprising, and we regrouped real quickly. Like I said, we had people on staff that had been doing that job before Russo and Ferrara. So we knew we had the bodies to pull it together. We just had to kind of hit the reset button. And sometimes hitting the reset button is not a bad thing.
I'm curious, we've seen Terry Taylor go back and forth in this era. He'd be with WCW and then the WWF, and then he'd go back to WCW. He had the ability to do that. And now we're seeing Russo and Ferrara do that. We've never spent any time talking about this, but if I find it interesting that Vince didn't have something in their contracts that didn't allow them the opportunity to go back and forth like this. For them to have the opportunity, it makes me wonder, with all due respect to those individuals that I listed, did Vince just see them behind the scenes as being replaceable? Like what's on camera, we don't want someone else we don't want to create value in that persona and then it appear for someone else on television. We got to have a different type of contract. But if it's one of these guys behind the scenes, we'll just find another one. Do you think that was the approach?
I think that was partially accurate.
Okay.
To be honest with you. Vince always felt like he could do anybody's job better than they could.
Okay.
Including me. He busted my balls forever. And he never had somebody to replace me that was sufficient in the eyes of many. So, yeah, I just think that was a little bit of ego. Vince's ego probably adversely affected this whole transaction.
Well, I'll tell you what, I got no ego about saying that I found something that makes alcohol a little more enjoyable. I'm talking about pre-alcohol. If you're not in the loop on Zbiotics, boy, have I got exciting news for you. It's a game-changing product that I use before a night out with drinks. And let's just be honest, at our age, after a night with drinks, we don't bounce back the next day like we used to. So we wind up feeling like we have to make a choice. We can either have a great night or we can have a great day. That is, until we found pre-alcohol. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut, and it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have pre-alcohol before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out with drinks, we've mentioned it before here on the show. Eric Bischoff is the person who introduced this to me. We had a big podcast convention in Denver, Colorado, and we had just found out about Zbiotics. They were vetting our products, or we were vetting their product rather, to see if it was something we would use on the show. And Eric and I had a great day meeting with all the agencies, but we had to be up early the next morning, 8 a.m. on stage, making a presentation. Well, Eric knew what to do. He reached in his bag. He slid me over a bottle of Zbiotics. And man, we were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 7:55 the next morning. It's all because of Zbiotics. I'm a big believer in this. I know you will be too. Go try it right now. I've heard about it. I was excited to try it. And I want you to do the same. And I want to give you a heads up. With their GMO technology, Zbiotics is continuing to invent probiotics that will continue to help with the everyday challenges of modern living. Go right now to zbiotics.com/JR to learn more. And man, you'll get 15% off your first order when you use our code JR at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/JR and use the code JR at checkout for 15% off.
It's an interesting product, no doubt about it, and it works. So those that party a little bit and want to go out, and especially the older that we get, I don't recover as quickly as I used to, but also because of the meds I'm on and the diabetes issues and so forth, I've been drinking very little. And I'm not complaining about that change in my life. It was time, but this is a great innovation to help you, no matter your age. And the older you are, I think the better it works. So give it a shot, folks. It's a new product. It's an interesting concept, and I think you'll be happy that you checked it out.
Zbiotics.com/JR. Use that promo code JR.
That's it.
There's so many news and notes. I don't even know that we'll get to the doggone pay-per-view, because this has got to be October of '99, one of the most eventful months in WWE history. So we just mentioned that the head writer, he's going to be having a secret meeting with WCW, and that's October 2nd. Well, fast forward, he has the conversation with Vince on October 3rd. October 4th, it's time for a Monday Night Raw. And on October 5th, we're going to do a SmackDown taping, and disaster strikes. Droz suffered what we feared would be a very serious neck injury against D'Lo Brown. It was just a couple minutes into a fast-paced match. D'Lo's doing a running power bomb, and somehow, some way, Droz winds up landing on top of his head. He's going to lay in the ring for like 15 or 20 minutes as paramedics are working on him. He's taken to a hospital by ambulance, and he was yet to regain feeling or movement in his lower body. The very next day, that was on Tuesday, the very next day, he had immediate emergency surgery Wednesday morning to treat that broken neck. And the goal is, we're trying to see, can we get anything to allow him to regain movement of his legs? We know this winds up not being a temporary thing, and Droz is paralyzed from the chest down. We haven't spent much time talking about this. Did you see this accident happen live, or what can you tell us about this?
No, I was actually in Michigan, at a deer hunting reserve with Stone Cold, taking some vignettes. So, we got a call. I can't remember who called me, to be honest with you. It's been that long ago. But somebody called me from the office and gave me the bad news about Droz, who was very well liked and a good dude, and just had a great attitude. He deserved much better than he got. But it was just one of those freak accidents that can happen when you're doing your own stunts, and there's a lot of movement, and they're big athletic guys. So it was shocking. You just holding hope that somehow or another, Droz is going to regain some feeling. And, I visited him a couple of times there at his home and try to cheer him up and just showing that we're cared and we're on top of it type thing. And then Droz passed away this year, did he not?
Yeah, Droz is no longer with us, sadly.
Yeah. It was sad. It was sad because he was such a nice guy. People loved him, and he deserved better. That's all I'm trying to say. So I was with Steve, and neither one of us could believe what we're hearing. It's just one of those freak deals, man. You can't foresee it, and it was tough. It was heartbreaking. Tears were flowing, no doubt about it. And I had a hard time maintaining my composure when I went to visit Droz, seeing him sitting in a chair, helpless.
Yeah.
And he still had a good attitude, Connie. That's what was amazing to me, is that he stayed positive and laughing and stuff. And he made the best out of a horrible, horrible situation. So it just very, very unfortunate. And, we're lucky, especially in today's style of wrestling. We're lucky that we haven't had more injuries in the business itself, not just WWE, but everywhere.
Yes.
These guys are trying things, and they're trying to continue to raise the bar. And that worries me. It worries me today about some of the things these guys do, because when they sit down to put a match together, it seems like they're more interested in the spots that they're going to do and, the sensationalism. And sometimes that sensationalism comes for the price. So I'm surprised there's not even more injuries in today's world, because these guys are taking hellacious chances. That's why I keep talking about the performance at WW or at AEW big events, premium events, pay-per-views. They always rise to the occasion because they're trying to do more and more. And somewhere along the way, it's just inevitable that trying to do more is more harm than help, quite honestly. So it was a shame, no doubt about it. Droz was a good guy, and we all loved him and still do. I've gotten to know his family, and all these years later, I still have contact with some of them, his sister and so forth, his nieces. I try to be a good administrator in that respect. It's just hard to work up the courage to go to somebody's home and see them so docile and so stationary, not being able to move. So it was tough, man. It was a tough time to be JR, and it's not about me, but I had a job to do, and that was to care for injured talent in any way that I could. So I remember those days vividly. I know Steve and I set up once we got the news, and like I said, I flew to Michigan to meet with him on these vignettes. It was just, it was hard. It was hard to put it all together because things were happening, Connie, that we had no precedent for. We hadn't had any debilitating injuries to that degree. And it was hard to see him in that state. And Steve and I both set up that night and had a lot to drink, trying to drown our sorrows. Because, like I said, Droz was a very well-liked guy. He was a really good athlete. He had a good aptitude for the business, and it was all for naught. All for naught, unfortunately.
Hey, I wanted to ask you a little bit about D'Lo. You know, it's been generally accepted that this was just a freak accident. I don't think any of the boys sort of blamed D'Lo or felt like he was dangerous. But I'm not sure if the office felt the same way. And I know that I'm about to confuse real life and some silly creative, but as we see D'Lo right now on the screen here at grillingjr.com, he was the European champion when this happens. He loses that European championship later in this same calendar month. And that's kind of the end for D'Lo, as a featured character on the programming. He's still going to be around. He's still going to have a job. But he's no longer going to be in the hunt for the Intercontinental title or the European title. And he's largely going to become an enhancement character after this.
Yeah, you're right.
With the benefit of hindsight, it does feel like the office maybe lost confidence in him. I'm not going to say it was punishment, but it does feel like his career, for better or worse, is going to largely become defined by that moment, that accident. I don't think that's necessarily fair for D'Lo, but that is the way it feels when I look at it from the outside looking in. How did you feel about it?
Same way. You know, the audience, or the office rather, just kind of, lost confidence, and you know he couldn't get away from that moment, and it's too bad too, because D'Lo, like Droz, was very well liked.
Yes.
And a smart guy, and he could contribute with finishes and things of that nature. He was always very reliable. I thought D'Lo got a bad break on that whole damn thing. But when you look at the other side of the issue, the one that got the bad break, no pun intended, was Droz.
Yeah.
So D'Lo kind of got lost in the shuffle, and he couldn't regain that confidence that the office had in him, because look, he was a young guy, good hand, good size, intellect, a lot of real positive things were happening for D'Lo.
Yes.
And it just, his card got punched, and it was just, it was bad timing, unfortunate. It shouldn't have happened the way it did, but, sometimes we can't do anything about it. I had many talks with D'Lo about that stuff. And, my issue was that you got to get past the guilt.
He was struggling with that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it just was the move that did Droz in was not a complicated situation, but it was risky. In hindsight, it was very risky. So, it's just a little freaky thing, man. Just a little to the left, a little to the right, and all that good stuff. And it happened. And I just never thought he got a fair shake after that situation. He couldn't get away from the accident. That was going to be his legacy.
That sucks.
And that's not the legacy that you want. And I remember I talked to him about that whole deal. You'd ask the question, is this fair? And well, it's not fair. But sometimes life isn't fair. And we got to regroup and go with it. So, but D'Lo's had a decent career. He's been around for a long time. He got back on his feet, shall we say. And he's a good office employee, good at working out finishes and things of that nature. He had a lot to offer. So I felt bad for him about that situation, because you couldn't have found a more ideal teammate or someone positive in the locker room. I mean, some of D'Lo's work with the nation was outstanding, very entertaining. But it just was a shame that two careers essentially were destroyed in that one short match on television.
It's so wild to think about D'Lo Brown and how this really defined his career. Because even when I just went to Google him and I typed in D'Lo Brown, I mean, even on my Google, when I go to type that in and I just type in D'Lo Brown, I start to get suggestions about Droz and about this accident. And it was an accident. Just to remind everybody, I've never seen the footage. I don't think anybody has, but from what I've heard, it was a running power bomb. And I know guys either use baby oil or water before they go out. And I know at the time, Droz was wearing like a fishnet top. Of course, D'Lo's going to have on spandex. And it's hard to get a grip on either one of those type of fabrics. And now if we've got a little bit of water, we got a little bit of oil, we got a little bit of sweat, and we got a running start, you move a little bit here or there, and man, disaster struck. But a total freak accident.
Yep.
It's just devastating because you feel bad, not just for Droz. I'm not minimizing what happened to him. I know his life forever changed, but so did D'Lo's. And D'Lo's actually talked about this on a podcast called Insight with Chris Van Vliet. And if you like wrestling podcasts and you'd like to hear more from D'Lo about this, you can look up Chris Van Vliet's podcast. It's called Insight with Chris Van Vliet. He's got some of the more interesting and in-depth interviews you can find anywhere. Guys like The Undertaker and Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre and Dave Bautista, even Jesse Ventura have sat down with Chris Van Vliet. But if you'd like to hear more from D'Lo, he's even talked to D'Lo. It's Insight with Chris Van Vliet. Get it anywhere you enjoy your wrestling podcasts, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening to this. That's Insight with Chris Van Vliet. And Vliet is spelled Vliet. As a remedial learning student here in Alabama, I needed to spell that. Chris Van Vliet is the man, and he does have some D'Lo interviews there that you'll enjoy. I mentioned this is a crazy month for the company, but it might just be a crazy doggone week. To remind everybody, we had the Rebellion pay-per-view on October 2nd. That's in the UK. On October 3rd is when Russo signs his contract and then calls and lets Vince know the news. October 4th is Monday Night Raw live. And then the next day is the Droz injury. And the very next day on Wednesday, Gorilla Monsoon passes away at just 62 years old. He'd had crazy, serious health problems over the past few years, including a recent heart attack. He wrestled in the ring from 69 to 1980. He was married to his wife for 40 years. He had 3 children. He had 4 grandchildren. I think most everyone listening to this knows his son, Joey Morella, was a former WWF referee, and he died in a car crash between house shows years prior to this.
All right.
But my understanding is that Gorilla was still coming into the studio to do commentary with Michael Cole and Dr. Tom Pritchard for the international version of Superstars just a few weeks prior to him passing away back in September. But you want to talk about bad news, man.
Yeah.
As silly as it sounds, Russo's leaving. Droz is potentially paralyzed. Gorilla Monsoon's gone. It's just Wednesday of the same week.
Tough week, man.
Yeah.
Tough week. A lot of, we're talking about balls in the air. There's a lot of balls in the air, and the passing of Gorilla was just heartbreaking. I would not have had the career I had in WWE if it had not been for Gorilla Monsoon. He looked to me like a son, and I was a source of a lot of his good-natured ribbing. And I sometimes I would drive him to the casinos if we got in a situation where a show was not going to be edited until late that night to get us back on track. He'd get with me and we'd spend the day at a casino, and I'd just hang around and wait on him because he was in the high roller room. He's a big-time gambler. Big-time gambler. I remember one time he came to me and wanted to borrow $10,000, which I thought was shocking. Luckily for me, I had the money, and I had no issues loaning him the cash, and I had no issues getting repaid. I never had any doubt about that. But I love Gorilla Monsoon. I really, truly did. He was like a family member to me. I learned a lot about the wrestling business. I learned a lot about Vince. I learned a lot about the WWE or the WWF. And Gorilla was quite the entrepreneur. And like I said, I just loved the guy. He was a godsend for me. And I'd be down in the dumps, and he'd pull me out of it, generally with a meal. So he knew the weight of my heart was through my gut, and I just loved him. I can't think of anybody that I've worked with in pro wrestling in my 50 years now in the business that I had more respect for and more love for than Gorilla Monsoon. Bob Morello, just a wonderful man, and I think about him all the time. There's a gate agent in Jacksonville, the American Airlines guy, gate agent, and somehow or another he's gotten a relationship with Gorilla's family. So every time I'm at the airport, which is frequently, seemingly, we'll talk about Maureen, that's Gorilla's widow. And it just keeps me updated. And but I miss him. I think about him almost every day. Seriously, he just was a sweetheart of a guy. And to see him get repositioned at the announce table and how he handled it in a positive way, and I'd like to think that was because he liked working with me.
Right.
I was always on time. I was always respectful. I knew how to put him over and make him feel like he still had worth.
Yeah.
The older we get in broadcasting, Conrad, you're chasing your tail, so to speak, because it's not good to be old and on camera. And I defy that now. Look at your news guys in your local market. Look at other television personalities that are on TV. And the older they get, the more in jeopardy that they become. So but I love the guy. I never had a crossword with him, not one time. He loved to go out and eat and tell stories. He had a treasure trove of stories regarding some of the biggest names in wrestling. And as I mentioned earlier, I think I mentioned earlier while we were on the air, that Mae Young was the policeman for Billy Wolf's wrestling group, and she was the shadow for Mildred Burke and helped Mildred, because if Mildred got hurt, quote unquote, wink, wink, inadvertently, then somebody else is going to get that top spot. And that was a lot of money. I mean, Mildred did real well. She bought a home in California, and she's traveled the world, and she just had so much respect. And I don't know. Monsoon was that role for Vince Senior. So if anybody had any issues, I remember one time I had a run-in with Savage. I always admired Randy's in-ring work, Connie. I want to make that very clear. He was a legitimate superstar, but he could also be a prick. And I hate to say that about the dead, but he was not a real good guy at times. And he cornered me at the TV studio because of something I allegedly said on a generic interview. He didn't like being put in those positions where he was going to be doing an interview and without a match to talk about and what have you. But that's what Vince wanted. He wanted him to have exposure on television. And so he cornered me at the TV studio and read me the riot act. And all of a sudden, it's like this big shadow overcame both of us. And it was Gorilla. And so the confrontation, if you want to use that term, came to an end at that moment because of Monsoon's size, and he was unintimidatable, and he could handle himself. And he was a great amateur wrestler at Ithaca College, and like I said, he bailed me out in that particular moment because I'm sure Savages are going to take a shot at me and knock me out or bust me up or what have you, because that's where it was leading to. And Randy was so unpredictable, you just never did really know. So Monsoon intervened, and no blows were struck, and we all went on about our business. So that's the kind of guy he was. He'd put his own safety and his own body at risk to help a friend. And I was certainly a friend, the Gorilla Monsoon. And I think about him, like I said, I think about him every day, just about. Just the way he laughed. He was, I know when we go on the road, we would travel together on the road, and the worst ass chewing I ever got from Monsoon was that I allowed, wink, wink, the rental car people to get him he had to have leather seats so he could scoot in and out easier. And little things like that is what got under his saddle. But I've made that mistake once. Hell, I didn't know. And so I told him, Gino, I didn't know you had to have leather seats. I understand it. I don't disagree with it, but I didn't know. And that mistake was made once, and it was never made again. So he just was a lovable human being. And I remember he used to eat pastrami sandwiches with mayonnaise. It's funny the things you remember, or a Reuben with mayonnaise or whatever. He liked mayonnaise. And so who's going to challenge him on his diet? But I love the guy. I truly, truly loved him. And he showed me a side of the wrestling business that I had not seen before, because even working for Cowboy was challenging more often than not, because he was demanding and alpha male and all that stuff. Well, Monsoon was an alpha male, but he kept it under control. And for those things he taught me and patience and so forth, I really appreciate. And that's why I have such great love and respect for him to this very day.
Ken Shamrock is going to be finishing up here. It's coming out in the Observer that he had pretty significant damage done to his neck, but it's not going to require surgery. But it doesn't look like he's coming back to pro wrestling. He's instead going to concentrate on managing and training his Lions Den fighting team and then get back into fighting in the year 2000. He has his last match in September, late September, the third week of September, 1999. How did it come to an end formally and officially with the World Wrestling Federation and Ken Shamrock? Do you recall?
Kenny just wanted to concentrate on his MMA career. He had a great reputation there, and he was successful. He had a lot of big fights. He had great name identity. And he liked the fact that he could have a career in MMA and not be on the road every day. You got to remember too, those guys when they're booked, they were on the road about 3 or 4 days every week, without any time off to speak of, unless they came to me and asked me for some time off, and I would always grant it. I don't think I ever turned anybody down that needed time off, because I knew how important it was, or they wouldn't be asking. So, but that's how that came about. There was never a harsh word. Kenny and I had a good rapport, and it started out rocky, because sometimes he'd oversleep and made it kind of tough to manage. But we got past that and over it, and became good friends. And so I understood he wanted to be home more. I understood that he had a foundation already established in MMA. MMA was just starting to really take off and grow. He wanted to be on the downside of that deal, and I understood it. And he just wasn't committed to the traveling life of a pro wrestler. And it's just one of those things where you just had to. I couldn't fix that one.
Yeah.
He wanted out, and I understood why he wanted out, and it made sense to me. So that's kind of what we did. And we hated losing him. He was just becoming good. I mean, really good. He had those matches with Owen Hart and others, and he was always business, and the boys respected him. So I hated to lose him, because he was ascending to be a permanent main event talent. But we never quite got that far. Even though he had success, we never got to finish the task. And but he was, it wasn't a surprise. He loved MMA. He's spent much of his life building his reputation, his legacy in that world. That world was getting more lucrative. So he did what he thought was the right thing to do. And, but we missed him. Like I said, he was on the cusp, Conrad, of becoming a big time star. And that's what I tried to convince him of, that, I can work with you on your schedule if you need some time off or whatever. And a lot of guys get in that rut and in that routine. They don't want to step away from television because they know television is their lifeblood. So, but it was a loss for us, but not one that was totally unexpected.
Let's talk a little bit about Chris Jericho, because he's going to be making some headlines here. Allegedly, the first Russo-less Raw, so that Monday Night Raw without Vince Russo, the very first one. That's where we see The Rock wrestling Chris Jericho. Now, Russo wrote in his version of Monday Night Raw that Jericho would pin The Rock. That gets changed without Russo, and Rock goes over. 7 minutes and 43 seconds. And the Observer would write at the time, Jericho is really coming across, as far as how he's portrayed in the ring, as a mid-carder. And boy, Wade Keller just heaped on a whole lot of detail here, saying Chris Jericho is finding out how it isn't easy to live up to the grand entrance and the hype that the WWF gave him. Given the high expectations everyone had for him, he shouldn't be shocked that he is facing scrutiny internally at every turn. Big Show was unhappy after his match on the September 28th SmackDown tapings. He was so unhappy that he threw a fit backstage and even punched a wall in the locker room. One person said that Big Show was so upset he quote unquote wanted to kill Jericho. I guess one of the concerns was that Big Show was getting a short arm scissors from Jericho, and he doesn't think that he should be doing that style of move to him. Allegedly, there was concern that Jericho was going to come in and try to work a cruiserweight style, and his match with Big Show got criticism the opposite way. Here's what's written in the Torch. Jericho wrestled as if he were a super heavyweight, expecting Big Show to sell moves that, because of the size difference, lacked credibility and made Big Show look weak. The next night, at another set of tapings, late in the match, Jericho would slap Road Dogg hard across the eardrum. He followed up right away with a second stiff slap. Road Dogg, apparently not the least bit pleased with how stiff Jericho was wrestling, gave him a full force slap back. Jericho got the message loud and clear, but defended himself later, saying management asked him to wrestle an aggressive, vicious style to overcome his soft image. We would continue, and well, there's just lots more incidents here, but lots of people aren't happy with Chris Jericho. What do you remember of this rough start to Chris Jericho here in October of 1999?
Oh, I'd say get over it.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, Chris was caught in between a rock and a hard spot. He had a lot to contribute, as he still does in AEW. He's no spring chicken, but he doesn't miss a beat. So Jericho was getting a lot of direction from a lot of different people. And of course, he had his own mindset. He had his own way of looking at it. I hired Chris. I recruited him. I hired him. I just thought that his only downfall was going to be his height. He's great talent, especially in that early days of his career in the WWE. So I just say get over it, guys. Figure this shit out. It's fucking fiction. Make it work for you. And I can't tell you when to use a headlock or when to use a inside cradle or whatever. But I can tell you that if you guys don't get this shit together, Vince is going to get frustrated and we're going to move on. And there's just no reason for us to get to that conclusion. So I was always in Jericho's corner. I still am to this very day. He's one of the when I go to work on these pay-per-views for AEW and I see him, we always have time to talk to each other, have a laugh or two, go to catering or whatever. and enjoy each other's company. So he's always been an advocate of mine, and it's reciprocal. So that was the whole basic situation. You guys just got to get this past this shit, and let's get about all on the same page and do what we do best, and that's entertain the people. I just thought that he was held at a standard that wasn't fair more often than not because of his height.
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't because of his ability to wrestle.
Right.
He could do flying stuff. He could brawl. He could chain wrestle. He had a great background all his years in Mexico and in England and so forth. He was just I thought a hell of a get for us, and I still do. And when he got hired by Tony Khan in AEW, I thought that was one of the smartest things that Tony could have done to help stabilize this roster, his new roster. And Chris has been a great addition ever since day one. And he calls most of his own shots now. And why not? Like I said, I've used this analogy before with Cowboy. Cowboy would hire top guys to come in because they would help Cowboy book their character. And if you get a talent to buy into their character and contribute creatively, you have a whole hell of a lot better chance of it working than not. So I'm a big Chris Jericho fan. I'm not real objective when it comes to this or that, his height or whatever. I walked into a fight one time with Goldberg and Jericho was holding his own, and we broke it up. I remember vividly. Jericho got a front face lock on him, and I don't know that if he was afraid. I doubt that, but he was cautious. He maintained. When I got there, he had the front face lock on Goldberg and had it cinched in. And somebody said, well, he was scared to death. Well, I don't know, whatever the reason was, it worked because it bought him some time until the cavalry got there and broke it up. And then, of course, the subsequent talks, you guys got to get along and we got to figure this shit out. And, what's the biggest issue? What's the biggest issue that we have with you two guys? Because somewhere down the road, that's a match you'd want to book. So it was a interesting time, to say the least, Connie. Interesting times.
I want to ask you about Chris Jericho. We've recently seen some news here in 2024 that's come out that his contract with AEW ends in 2025. And I know you're no longer in a talent relations capacity. You never were with AEW. So you don't have any inside information. I'm just asking you to, in your professional opinion, your best guess as someone who knows Chris Jericho personally, do you think that we might see, much like we saw Sting's last match earlier this year, could we see Chris Jericho's last match in AEW next year? Or would you expect him to continue with AEW, with WWE, with TNA? What do you think is next in 2025 for Chris Jericho?
I think AEW will be his last stand. He's got lots of influence there. Like I said earlier, he pretty much books his own programs. He lays out his own matches, and why not? That's what you want. I'm all for that. I wish more talents would take a personal interest in what they're doing. And, Chris has developed a relationship with Tony Khan that has been pretty substantial. So, and he's the kind of guy you want around. He's the kind of guy that you want you're as an office guy. He's the kind of guy you want in those roles. I see him talking to talents all the time. Young talents. They go to him and ask for advice or what do you think of this? Or should I be doing less of that or whatever? And he's always, to my knowledge, been very willing to share his time and his expertise to some of these young kids. So I know he's helped make some guys. Darby Allin's a good example. You remember they had some matches on AEW television that were outstanding, and it gave Darby, it gave him a leg up. It gave him a jump start on his career. And Chris put him over. It's like Jericho's never been one to not put somebody over if it was the right thing to do. sometimes you get into a situation where you don't know what's right and what's wrong. Is this the way we should go with this deal? Should he put him over? Should he not put him over? All that stuff. So Chris has just always been real good. He's an MVP in my view at AEW without question. There's just no doubt about that. And I love working with him. And I love seeing how he works with other talents, as I mentioned. It's invaluable, and they listen to him because he's been there and done that. And that's important to me. There's where they get their learning. I will learn you, darn you. So good stuff, man. He's a very valuable asset to the company. He can always go out and have a great match as a baby face or a heel. He can work with anybody and make them look better than they actually are. And even though he's not a spring chicken, he stays in great shape. He's a keeper. And if Tony Khan is smart, and he is, Chris is going to be a part of the company for the foreseeable future and a long time to come. I do think that somewhere down the road, when he and Tony Khan make the decision to say that's enough, that he'll get a send off like Sting's in that sense, special occasion, big time deal. So I just don't think it's anytime soon.
Well, I'll tell you what it's time for, and that's to start looking a little better, thanks to our friends at True Classic. I'm a big fan of True Classic, and you will be too. Go check it out for yourself at trueclassic.com/JR. They've got some of the best-selling t-shirts, hoodies, jeans, and more. And what I like is, as a guy, man, when I find something I like, I want more of it. Is there anything worse than having like a favorite pair of pants, but you've only got one pair? Or it's your favorite shirt, but you've only got one of them? Well, what's great about True Classic, man, you can get 3, 6, even 9 packs. I saw a 12-pack. I'm hooking it up. And let me give you a heads up, as a fellow big boy, they got 3XLs in there and some of the most comfy shirts you can ever find. We're talking premium products at an affordable price. These are shirts that were designed to have your best features with a perfect fit. It's going to be snug in the arms and chest, and just enough for that right room in the midsection. You know what I'm talking about. They got all the fall must-haves too. If you're looking for some long sleeve Henleys, some waffle hoodies, they got your jeans, your button-ups, your joggers, and more, and things I've never seen before. I mean what I said about my favorite pair of pants, because I've had one of those before, just pants to wear around the house, or running errands around town. Well, if you've only got one pair, it means you can only wear them every now and again. But when you find something you like at True Classic, buddy, you can get a 3-pack, a 6-pack, a 9-pack, and get it in different colors. I really dig what they're doing. I think you will too. And how about the active wear? It's moisture wicking, it's quick dry, and it's even got odor control. You can mix and match, you can dress it up, you can dress it down. But here's what I like. It's a 100% perfect fit guarantee, and they've even got easy returns. And True Classic is not some fly-by-night operation. We've got over 4 million customers here so far for True Classic, and over 200,000 reviews. So this is a brand that you can trust. Go right now, check it out. It's trueclassic.com/JR. Fall is here. It's time to step up your game. And right now you can unlock big savings when you bundle packs. Just use our exclusive link at trueclassic.com/JR to save. That's trueclassic.com/JR. Shop now and elevate your wardrobe today.
Yeah, quickly. It's a great option, and real quality stuff. Fits good, and us fat guys got to kind of pay attention to what we're wearing so we don't look even fatter than we are. Conrad, I lost, I weighed 198 the other day. 198.
I bet you look better than ever in your True Classics. Go hook it up, man. trueclassic.com/JR. They got something for everybody, man. Polos, jeans, joggers. You're going to love the cut. You're going to love the deals when you get these packs. trueclassic.com/JR. Hey, so let's talk about some things you wrote in your Ross report. And this was on October 1st that this came out. You mentioned the WWF hasn't sold the Debbie Reynolds Hotel, but it's planning to soon. I wanted to ask you about that. What was the vision for that? We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Debbie Reynolds. It does feel like it was kind of snake bit from the beginning. What was your perception of that deal?
Well, the on paper, the game plan was logical and made sense. To have a WWE property in Las Vegas with memorabilia, almost like a shrine. And it was in a good location. It had been around a long time. So I understood the concept. It just one of those deals where it just wasn't meant to be. So, but it was a good idea in the beginning to have to have your own. They're still looking to have, they still don't have a Hall of Fame. They still don't have a enshrinement area where you got all your memorabilia and all these things. And that would have been that. It just didn't work out at the end of the day. And I think part of it was financial. It just was an idea that we weren't ready for. But I did like the concept in the beginning, and having a place in Vegas where you could go stay, having a tourist area, so to speak, it would have worked out fine. It's generally, we talk about why something didn't happen. 2 C's, cash and creative. I got a feeling this one's more cash than anything.
Let's talk a little bit about Kimona. It's written in the Observer that, hey, here's a correction. She has not signed. She's being considered, but no contract is yet to be offered. And there's an internal debate as to whether or not to take her. Kevin Kelly would go on Bite This and say that she has been at the WWF headquarters, but you wrote in the Ross report that she hasn't signed, nor has she spoken with anyone who could offer her a contract. I know
Correct.
Behind the scenes, Terry Taylor was a big advocate for the performer that we knew in ECW as Kimona Wanalea, and we know eventually she does pop up in WCW as Leia Meow. What was going on with her in the WWF? Because it does feel like there's conflicting reports where Kevin Kelly says she's there, and you say, well, she ain't coming in, and she ain't ever talked to anybody about coming in. I'm fascinated by this.
Well, I'm just telling the truth. That's all that was. She was on a short list of talents that we're looking at, but didn't have a lot. I don't know how good to this very day here in 2024. I don't know that she could wrestle. I mean, she's sexy. She looked great, an exotic look, and all those things. But I still, at the end of the day, to this very day, know and understand how advanced her wrestling skills were. So that was an issue. But I never met with her in an official capacity or any other capacity that I can recall about bringing her in. I don't know where Kevin Kelly got his information. I'm assuming he got it from her, or just trying to do the right thing and help her out.
Right.
But he may have misspoken that one.
I do want to talk a little bit about some other news that you had in your Ross report. You're going to mention that The Rock did a photo shoot with People magazine. You're also going to mention that Test is in for a big push when he's ready, that Vic Grimes might be headed to ECW. So you're dropping some nuggets in here. But one of the things you mention is the WWF hasn't had conversation in quite some time with Medusa.
All right.
And we know that Medusa ultimately did come back and become a member of the WWE Hall of Fame. But was that something that Vince still had animosity about, or did he just not see value in Medusa, the character, in 1999?
I think the latter. To be honest with you, maybe he believed that the ship had sailed, that there was more. We should invest our equity and our monies in younger talents, younger females, especially. But yeah, she was. I think she's resurrected. She's still back in the good graces, right? I mean, isn't she? Doesn't she does a few projects here, there, and yon?
Yeah, absolutely.
I best I understand. I like the hell out of her. She's a funny, engaging.
Yes,
she's one of the boys.
Absolutely,
and I love her for that. So, but I think Vince probably thought that if we're going to continue to invest significant monies, we need to do it with these hot chicks that are, as he said to me one time, go out and hire me a bunch of athletic 10s.
Yeah.
That's easier said than done, my friend. Athletic 10s don't grow on trees. But I think that's what it was. I don't think there was anything horribly personal. I'm sure it came off that way, especially for her.
Yes.
So, but I think all those rough waters have been calmed somewhat. And because I see her doing stuff from time to time with the WWE, which is smart. Paul Levesque is smart. Why not use an asset if they're available and they can fill a specific role? So I think that's Vince. I think that would be Vince's concept, is that, she's a little bit long in the tooth. She wasn't really, especially based on today's standards. She could have helped a lot of young women with their in-ring game. Same reason I hired Lisa Moretti and Jackie Moore and others that could work, and they could teach the Trish Stratuses and the Litas of the world what not to do and how to take care of themselves, how to be safe, how to tell a story. So, but she was a star. Medusa, and she still is a star. So I'm glad at the end of the day it all worked out, and she seemingly stays busy. She's very active on social media, and I think the world of her. She's just a hell of a woman. Like I said, she's one of the boys, and I mean that in a really positive way.
Let's talk a little bit about Gorilla Monsoon's funeral. This sort of jumped off the page for me. A couple of weeks after he passed, Dave would write that only Miguel Perez and Savio Vega attended Gorilla Monsoon's funeral. I mean, in terms of the current roster. Of course, The Undertaker and Stone Cold did send flowers, but I guess there were reports that a lot of the family and friends were disappointed that Gorilla's funeral wasn't attended by more of the current stars and roster and portion of the company. Did you attend Gorilla's funeral? What do you remember about that?
Absolutely, I did. No doubt about it. And it was held in Jersey, and it's held in the middle of the week, as I recall. And it was just not convenient for a lot of the talents who'd been on the road all week anyway.
Right.
I want to think they had that funeral on a midweek type thing. It was somewhat inconvenient scheduling wise, but I went to it. I think I sat by Bobby Heenan at that funeral. Bobby was extremely close to Monsoon. They were like brothers. So yeah, I guess it was just a matter of inconvenience. And then whoever said a fucking funeral's got to be convenient.
Right.
How's a funeral going to be? You're celebrating the death of someone.
Right.
Or the life of someone.
Right.
So anyway, I remember that the church was full, but a lot of it was just friends and family and all that stuff. Not a lot of wrestling personalities were there. And I always felt that was just, there's no excuse for that. I remember I was in a car with Heenan, and he called Howard Finkel, and chewed his ass out for not being there after all Monsoon had done for Howard over the years. So that was unfortunate. But Howard should have been there. Monsoon looked at him like a little nephew type guy. But Howard should have been there, no doubt. No argument. He just wasn't. He decided not to make the travel commitment to drive down to Jersey and attend the services. So I was a little disappointed in the crowd, but you go back and look at it, and the church was full. It just wasn't full of wrestling people.
Right. Man, well, let's talk about this worst week ever. I mean, that's kind of the theme for this show. Just a couple of days after the Droz incident on October 7th, you're going to be tasked with going on MSNBC's Internight Talk Show with John Gibson, and Bruno Sammartino was going to be booked to sort of take the WWE to task about someone becoming paralyzed in the confines of their squared circle. So the company needs someone to represent them and put some lipstick on this bad situation. And unfortunately, you drew that. And so here you are now on live television, MSNBC, with media that hasn't always been friendly towards WWE programming or its content, which has certainly been more edgy and aggressive in recent years. And now here's, maybe one of the biggest enemies of Vince McMahon, Bruno Sammartino, here making a 2-on-1, and you're just caught in the crossfires. This is another day at the office of not such pleasant work for Jim Ross in 1999. What do you remember of this?
Well, I was apprehensive about going on. It was a new arena and new voices. And I was, like I said, apprehensive. I didn't know what to expect. It was a new world for me. And the irony of that was that Bruno and I actually got along very well thanks to Bill Watts. Watts had a great run in MSG and for Vince Sr. With Bruno. They started out as tag team partners. They lifted weights together. They were both heavy lifters. Both of them were 500-pound bench press guys. So they were freaks of nature in that era. And so Bill, I think, did a lot of groundwork for me to be accepted by Bruno in a lot of ways. And the fact that, Jan was from Pittsburgh and he was aware of that. So he and I never had bad words, thanks to Cowboy and his peacemaking mission that actually worked real well. And I know in the latter years, Bruno and I would talk on a semi-regular basis. And, he never liked the philosophy. He didn't want to run the wishbone. He didn't want to run four wides, using football vernacular. He wanted wrestling to be like it used to be. And for any of us, whether it be an announcer or whatever, you couldn't be like it used to be. Talents are different. Audience is demanding more. There's more information flow. A lot of things along those lines. But I always had a great rapport with Bruno. I miss him. He's another one of the Babe Ruth guys. He's a Hall of Fame multiple times over. And is one of the more respected guys in the history of pro wrestling.
I just, I can't imagine you being in this spot. And now, Stan Hansen is going to be discussed because there was a neck injury to Bruno with Stan Hansen. And then Bruno's just going to bring up on live TV. Yeah, but now there's drug problems with steroids and uppers and downers and cocaine. And you're quick to say there were no drug problems with either Darren Drozdov or D'Lo Brown. And so when the host asks you, well, whose fault was it? You're hesitant to place any blame in either direction and just don't answer the question because it really was an accident. And then the host just switched gears and starts bringing up this Indiana University study that's talking about, the content of the shows and how it might be damaging to children. And you're quick to defend the company and say, well, the show's rated TV 14. It's not suitable for children, and parents, should be involved in that decision, or just let the kids watch the weekend shows. Those are kid friendly. Man, there's just, it's almost impossible for you to make an appearance on television on the heels of an accident like this and come out looking good. I mean, even when you handle the Droz stuff, it's, well, what about drugs? Well, what about the content for kids? Well, it's a firing squad for you to just be on TV defending the WWF in 99, right?
Yeah, but I had no problem doing it, Conrad. I believed in the company. I still do. And I was put into some tough spots, but I was also being paid a lot of money to do my job. And so I felt like that the least I could do, wink, wink, was to be honest and answered the questions as best I could, best I was suited for. So, that role of as head of talent relations, was player personnel guy, the GM, whatever terms you want to use to make it more relatable, because the head of talent relations doesn't tell you a hell of a lot. What is that? What's that mean? So I that just went with the territory, and I felt like that I was smart enough and versed enough and had a strong belief in what we were doing that I could make it work if you gave me a chance to just discuss it a little bit. And I'd forgotten about that appearance. I guess that was in New York City, best I can recall.
I'm sure
But
you
anyway.
blocked it out. I mean, my goodness, why would anybody want to remember that?
All right. Yeah. It's been blanked. It's been deleted from my memory bank. Thank God. I had delete a couple times.
Let's talk a little bit about the writing situation with the company. Once the dust settles a week or so after the departure, where it's just shocking to everybody that Russo and Ferrara would leave, it would be in the newsletters that, hey, Russo was a part of a team and his relationships had deteriorated. And I mean, they're just quickly discrediting almost any value that Ed Ferrara brought, saying his contributions were minuscule and he only attended one TV a week. But the Russo piece of business is categorized as he had sort of had difficulty getting along with Steve Austin, that there had been some sort of falling out in recent weeks. And we know that Austin is just the biggest star. I mean, it's impossible to debate that he is the absolute biggest star in the company. But
Right.
Russo says he's become the hardest person to work with in the company because Austin doesn't want to make a misstep. And allegedly, one of the things they tied up again in 1999 about was Russo trying to elevate and build Jeff Jarrett, Austin just flatly refusing to work with Jeff Jarrett. And there's also some discussion that he wanted Austin to wrestle on some shows where Austin said, nope, I'm not wrestling until the pay-per-view. I've got an injury. I'm not just going to waste it on TV. And as they're laying out TV in advance of him leaving, there was some questions about what he might be doing that week on Raw or that week on SmackDown. And he just flatly told Russo, I'm going to be in a deer stand in Michigan. So figure it out.
That's when the D-Lo thing happened.
Yes. So I'm just thinking all of that maybe compounds into Russo's decision to think, I got to go do something else. Do you remember Russo expressing frustration to you about working with Austin?
Because I was so close to Austin and I didn't have the same set of problems that with Steve that Russo had. And I'm not saying that Steve was in the right all the time, but he knew what he wanted. He knew what his character needed. He was his own booker, shall we say. And again, going up and using that one illustration of the cowboy hiring guys that could help book their own programs is certainly prevalent. But they didn't get along well. And it may have been somewhat of a cultural thing as well. Steve was a legit redneck from South Texas. Russo was a Yankee from, I guess, I don't know where he's from, Massachusetts or Connecticut. I don't know where he's from. But he was a Northeastern guy. And sometimes there's conflicts of interest in the philosophies, even in pro wrestling of the Northeastern territory. So Russo was basing a lot of his stuff on the Howard Stern show or his watching WWF as a kid, and which is nothing wrong with that either, quite frankly. But he and Steve just had like oil and water. They did not get along. Russo wanted to be in control. Part of that infringed on my job description. And the one thing that Vince was smart enough about is that Austin gets along with JR. And he likes working with JR. JR answers his questions. He solves Steve's problems as best he could. And if not, he always had at the end of the day, they would have a good feel for their conversation, for their interactions. But Russo was never able to garner that trust. It's a lot of matter of trust. And I think Steve saw that, Steve wanted to know who he's going to work with in 3 months. And so all that was right. I mean, how would you not book Austin as your lead guy when he's selling more merch and he's selling more tickets and he's selling more pay-per-views than anybody ever had? If you're Russo in that era. And then maybe he did. I'm not saying he didn't, but maybe he did try to get along with Steve as best he could and just found it to be futile. It's not going to work. So, but then I got involved in those situations, which drove a wedge between Russo and myself. And because I'm smart enough to know that I'm going to take care of the top guys. You don't be an idiot. If you get that feel and you get that happening is coming about, you're not going to walk away from that deal. And I'll just say that as many great stars as WWE has produced, the Cenas and the Ortons and all these cats, Batista, and by the way, I hired all those guys. They're my guys. And I made sure anybody that got in my area knew that these were my guys. If you have an issue with Stone Cold, you come see me. And then I'll either facilitate a meeting or I'll handle it and get back to you. And I probably got a little full of myself at times as well, because I had influence. I was hiring some studs that all those guys I named. And Shelton Benjamin and I were talking about that the other day at AEW. And when we were in Tacoma, I was glad to see him. He looks great. He's solid as a rock. He's smart, and I'm glad that we have him. I really am. Sheldon's the kind of guy that will help others and gladly do so. So that's kind of where I am on that deal. Sheldon was the most athletic of all those. That all-star cast that we signed, he was the most athletic of the group. There's nothing he could not do. Where we failed Sheldon was helping him find his voice, literally. He just didn't have he needed help getting over as a talker. And that was what he was missing. Everything else, he had it. He's going to be at work on time, if not early. He's durable. You know, I remember a match. Do you remember the match he had with Shawn Michaels on TV?
How could you forget? Yeah.
What a match.
Yes. All time.
What a match.
All time.
Yeah. So, anyway, Shelton's a great addition for AEW right now. I'm glad we got him. He'll help a lot of the young cats and jammers. So this should work out well. So I'm glad we got him. And, he was just, he was in that fast lane of, when you're trying to compare Shelton Benjamin to Brock Lesnar and John Cena and Dave Batista and Randy Orton, that's some tall grass to cut through. It really is. So but I'm glad we got him down to AEW. He's going to help us. There's no doubt about it.
You know what else is going to help? That's our friends at Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs, and then it gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, and even your stress management. All you got to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know exactly what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after your workouts and your meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And then Lumen gives you tips to stay on top of your health game. Think of your metabolism as like your body's engine. It's how it turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is really at the center of everything your body does, well, optimal metabolic health translates to a whole host of benefits, like easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health with each breath. And these recommendations are designed to improve your pre and post-workout fueling for better performance and recovery, so you can power through your toughest workouts and add on muscle mass. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/grillingjr to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/grillingjr for 15% off your purchase. And we thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring today's episode. Let's talk a little bit about who's going to be replacing Vince Russo. It's going to be Tommy Blancha, who's previously worked on the Conan O'Brien show. He grew up a big wrestling fan,
Right.
and he's actually helping recruit some other writers. And there's been some ideas and some angles. It's come out here in the Observer that Russo and Ferrara pitched that Vince McMahon thought were just too far out there. But now we've got a new creative mind behind the scenes. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Tommy Blancha. What was your experience like working with him?
Oh, very positive. A nice guy. He listened. He wasn't looking for, he wasn't power crazy. He understood what his role was going to be. And he had a chance to really he needed to build a team around him and not make the same mistakes that apparently Russo and Ferrara made about cashing in their chips too soon. Tommy was a nice guy. I think he worked on the Conan O'Brien show. Did you say that?
Yes.
Yeah. So he was, he had a good background, and the great thing, he was a big fan. So he couldn't get enough of the product, which is good for burnout. More is better. So, but Tommy was a good hire, I thought. And I think the schedule probably bit him in the ass a little bit because it just never ends, Conrad. People don't they have a hard time now. Look at the WWE group now, and how many people that they have in their inner circle that help contribute to creative.
Yes,
they're doing it. They're doing it the right way, and I know that in the last several months, there's been different faces in different places for AEW and doing their thing. So it takes what's the old deal about it takes a village or some shit like that?
Yeah,
it takes that. It takes a lot of bodies to make this thing work, because a writer will have a certain relationship with specific talents that are positives. It just, you can't guarantee who's going to have the best, build the best relationship. In other words, who's going to be able to communicate with the Undertaker better? Because at the end of the day, these writers know
yes,
that a Taker doesn't like something, he just goes straight to Vince, which is as he should. And same way with Austin. Austin didn't like something, well, he might brood about it a little while, but he'd eventually get to Vince and they'd work it out somehow or another. Steve was just very particular. He felt like it shouldn't be impossible to have a plan. So in other words, who am I going to work with at SummerSlam? Who am I going to work with at the Survivor Series? How are we going to do the Rumble, and eventually get to WrestleMania? So that was his issue. He just felt like and he probably took for granted it's not an easy fix. It's not an easy fix. And sometimes guys you select, I know that, as you mentioned earlier, Russo really wanted Jarrett to get a push.
yeah.
And to do that, he needed to somehow or another get with Stone Cold and beat him.
Yeah.
And that wasn't going to happen.
No, sir.
Vince is smart enough to figure that out. I mean, Jeff is a hell of a hand. He still is, quite frankly. Still is. But there's certain things you're not going to, it's like going into the old WWF and beating Bruno. The Bruno losses were memorable because they didn't happen that often. So that's how I see that deal. Just sometimes you got to play your cards a little bit more conservatively, and I don't know that Vince Russo had that degree of patience. He really wanted more power than he was able to accumulate there. And I hope that he does look, I don't think he does. We've communicated several times since that era, and seemingly have a decent relationship right now. Things have a way of working out if you try hard enough, if you communicate. And so Russo and I in the later years communicated very well. And like I said, I'm really I'm glad he's made his own way. He's an entrepreneur, but he was a smart guy. But he used a lot of that Howard Stern reference I mentioned was true. You know, we had look at the guys we booked from the Howard Stern show on wrestling, a lot of them. So I just think he might have wanted more than was there for him to get, if that makes any sense. He wanted to be in charge, and he was in his area, but he wasn't going to come and manage the talent roster. That was my job. He had never negotiated any contracts I'm aware of. PPV did at the end of the day. I don't know, but it was just some, egos and macho this and being alpha males and all that stuff. And the locker room is an interesting area to traverse, if that's I think that's a word, to travel, to operate within. And so Vince did. Like I said, he at the end of the day, he did a real good job for a long time, but he should have managed himself a little bit better and gotten that stock money that he got. I don't think he got a dime because he's gone. He no longer worked there. So it's too bad in that regard. We made a lot of changes, but the company survived and got stronger. And that's what happens when you make change. You have the opportunity and the chance to make it better than it was. And I think that was everybody's goal. Like I said, we had some talented people working there. I've mentioned Bruce 2 or 3 times, but Bruce is close to Vince and all that. So Patterson, my God, Patterson was the architect for a lot of things. And the other thing that Patterson provided was a conduit and a relationship with The Rock. And that was important because we could all see that Steve was damaged goods and needed to heal as best he could. But in the meantime, The Rock was just evolving. And The Rock was he's a childhood friend through his dad and the Roy Shire territory in Frisco and so forth. He's the one Patterson's the one that turned me on to Rock, because I wasn't aware that Rocky Johnson even had a son. And so when Rock got cut from the Calgary Stampeders in the Canadian Football League, Patterson told me about it, said he's looking for work. He might be really good. Maybe you should go talk to him. And I took Patterson's advice, as I tried to more often than not, and got hooked up with Rock. We started talking, and I saw exactly what Patterson was talking about, the aptitude for garnering all the nuances in pro wrestling. The Rock already had all that shit down. And he was 6'5". He was good looking. He had an exotic look. So I told you the story before. We were sitting in a little diner in South Florida, and we had people offering us drinks, iced tea or Diet Coke or whatever the hell it may be, and they didn't even work there. They just wanted to come by our little booth and get a good look at Rock, who was wearing a tank top, which was very distracting for some of the young ladies in the place. And the guys recognized me, but they didn't know, come here from Sikkim, who Rock was, because he had not been on television yet. So they come by just to look at the meat on the hoof. And like I said, the women, he'd already passed their test. So good looking guy, great body, big, worked out well. So Patterson was very involved in that whole process. So he should always be given credit for that. I signed Rock. I developed a relationship with Rock, but none of that would have occurred if it hadn't been for Pat Patterson.
Let's talk a little bit about Jerry Lawler. He is not going to shock the world in an attempt to become the mayor. He was trying to become the mayor of Memphis here. He got 19,000 votes, but that's only about 12% of the total. Ultimately, the winner would be Willie Harrington, who got 75,000 votes. And I think Lawler probably thought, since he was cheered so heavily once upon a time when he was a mainstay in that territory as a headline wrestler, that he was going to get a lot of the quote unquote white vote and the black vote. But as the numbers come in, he got 19% of the white vote and only 1% of the black vote. He was only 49 years old when he did this. I kind of felt like, as a fan watching from the outside, someone who had never met Jerry at that point, that this was just a publicity stunt. Do you think he was genuine in his attempt to become the mayor of Memphis?
Absolutely. And he underestimated the popularity of Willie Harrington, who was also an African-American guy.
Yes.
Had been around for a while and had good name identity within the marketplace. But Jerry was very serious about becoming the mayor. It wasn't a joke to him. And then he got, the deeper he got into it, the more challenging it was, because to run for office, it's 24/7. And Jerry was not a guy that had built a reputation or his career on 24/7, unless you were talking about him being the booker for Memphis and becoming the top babyface. So, but he was dead serious in becoming the mayor. He and I talked a lot, but I think as time went on in the campaign, he saw more frequently how a pain in the ass it was to campaign and, clean up your messes and all that good shit. So same as it is today in politics, same as it is today. It's just, the world's changing, man. I'm not getting into political discussion here, because everybody's got the right to vote for whomever they choose.
Roll Tide.
Yeah. But some people can't understand why Trump's got the popularity that he has. And some people say, he was a great president. It's all subjective. And so anyway, Lawler found himself in waist deep water with the campaign and having to be on call all the time. And he liked doing the media. Didn't get himself back on television. But at a certain point, it became a fait accompli. I shouldn't be waist deep in this bullshit. So it kind of turned him off. So when he lost, I'm sure he was disappointed. I know he was disappointed, but it didn't destroy him. It didn't blow up his world. But he was serious about becoming the mayor. Why? I don't have a damn clue. I said, why would you want that job? I don't get it. There's no money. And he's a money guy. There was no money in it to speak of. So, but he was serious about it. I can tell you that. No doubt about that part.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the biggest Raws in history. And this one sort of flies under the radar for a lot of people because it's not really the high watermark. I mean, I know the Toronto Skydome show from February that did 41,000. That always overshadows this one, but it is a huge deal when on October 11th, Monday Night Raw rolls into the Georgia Dome. And I think so many of us listening to this, we think about the Georgia Dome for those famous Nitros, but there was a Monday Night Raw there that was attended by 33,375 fans. That makes it one of the 10 largest crowds in the history of American pro wrestling. And the only crowds that were larger, besides that show that I mentioned at the Sky Dome, were other dome shows, WrestleMania shows like the Silver Dome and the Alamo Dome and the Hoosier Dome. I mean, there's so many major shows, and now just all of a sudden, it's just a regular TV show, a Monday Night Raw in Atlanta, $861,000. When Vince strutted down to the ring that night, he had to be on fire that he's not only doing such great business, but in Ted Turner's backyard, in the hometown of WCW. How thrilled was Vince with this?
He was euphoric.
Yeah.
He was extremely pleased with that. I remember he booked myself, Michael Hayes, maybe Stone Cold. We had 3 or 4 guys go down there for on sale to get out of it's always important if you're a promoter, that first opportunity to solicit ticket sales is imperative. And so we all went down there for a media day and had a huge crowd lined up around the damn building. It was amazing. So we knew we had them by the short hairs at that point in time. And it played out in fact, over 30,000 people for a Monday night TV show was pretty amazing. So, but he was happy. He was no doubt happy about that deal. And I remember taking good care of the talents that were there on the payroll for giving up an off day and coming in. And a lot of the guys, like Austin, for example, was up to the challenge. He wanted it to be competitive, and he wanted it to be. He was a gamer. He was a game day guy, and so we had an opportunity to make our mark in the home market of WCW, and we did, and it was very successful.
We got to talk a little bit about the actual content of this Monday Night Raw from the Georgia Dome. First of all, Dave would note that Steve Austin is saying the word asshole left and right, and it's not being bleeped out at all. And Meltzer says that's the difference between getting a 6.0 rating and a 0.9 rating. I guess production has its privileges. But check out the creative here. We know that we've got, Stone Cold and Triple H feuding, and they're going to be brawling, but Chyna's going to come down to try to even things out and help her man. But rather than doing that, she spears good old JR. And that sets up a tag match. Stone Cold teaming with Jim Ross to take on Chyna and Triple H. What the fuck are we doing here, Jim? This is
trying to get a rating. Because it wasn't for match quality. Well, let's put JR in this match because it'll be great. Bullshit. And she was a little clumsy based on, I don't know if there's a shot there, Bull, of what her feet looked like. She was on these high heels, and it made her balance, staying balanced, challenging. There's right before I got the bullet. But she had these damn high heels on, and I remember she gave me pedigree. And I thought I'd been in a car wreck. It wasn't supposed to hurt that much. Right there you go. So she's got those little heels on, and they're not regular wrestling boots. They're more stylish. But she did a nice job whipping my ass, and we got another match out of it.
We should mention that the finish of this, well, along the way, there's some silliness on this show. Like The Rock is going to give the Bulldog a rock bottom into dog shit. And allegedly this is in response to something that Bret Hart has written in his Calgary column, where he said something about a bulldog rolling around in shit and being so stupid as to like it. Well, we're actually going to give him a visual representation of that. And we're going to roll his brother around in some dookie doo right in the middle of the ring. And as if that's not silly enough, and as if this mixed tag with Triple H and Chyna taking on Stone Cold and JR isn't silly enough, we're going to finish the show where Austin takes Triple H, throws him in a bathroom where this snake supposedly is, and then we're going to have a rattlesnake rattler sound effect piped in, and the show's going to go off the air. This is some silly shit. And I know people are always critical of Russo's creative. They can't do that here. At this point, he's in WCW. There's a lot going on here on this Monday Night Raw without Vince Russo. What'd you think of this? We got dog shit. We got JR wrestling. We got snakes in bathrooms and sound effects. We're getting a little out there.
All too gimmicky.
Yeah.
All too gimmicky. It was a one-off type deal, but it was all too gimmicky for my taste. And I think a lot of people's taste, but the fact that we're in the Georgia Dome and we had such an amazing crowd kind of soothe those open wounds a little bit of the gimmicky, of being too gimmicky. So it's, I never liked when I had to wrestle.
Right.
Cause I didn't know how to wrestle. And when you don't know how, you don't know how to take your bumps. So you can, I was luckier and shit that I didn't get hurt, cause I got ragdolled a little bit and Joni wanted to get over. And so she was very aggressive with me, and she wasn't being blatant or harmful. It was harmful in some sense, but she wanted to get over. And was that before the Jarrett thing?
Yeah, we're not quite yet to No Mercy, and I know that a lot of people feel like you've got a hard on for Jeff. I know that's not true. You've got a hard on for BlueChew, and that's where. Come on now, everybody can get a hard on with BlueChew. It's a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. You'll sign up at BlueChew.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. BlueChew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part, it's all online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. BlueChew wants you to have the confidence to perform at your best, so discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try BlueChew free when you use our promo code JR at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is JR to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank BlueChew for sponsoring today's podcast.
Yeah, since day one, by the way.
Yes.
And we really do appreciate their business. And I know that a lot of our audience partakes in the BlueChew experience.
Roll Tide.
So there you go. There you have it. So give it a try, folks. I mean, here's the deal. You pay $5.
Yes.
That's for shipping and handling. And it's a great offer. I'm telling you. What's better than free?
Nothing.
And it is free. All you're doing is paying $5 shipping.
That's right.
That ain't going to break the bank.
No,
so, and you'll thank Conrad and I later. I promise you.
Well, before we get to much later, I want to do some questions. We've got a live studio audience here. Bobby wants to know, after Russo and Ferrara left, did Vince go through all the contracts to prevent something like this from happening again?
I'm not aware that happened. I think he learned a lesson that, you got valuable people and doing important jobs. You want to cover your ass and make sure you're protected. So I'm sure he did that, but I don't know how much he went through the contracts. We discussed it, but I don't know that there's anybody else on the roster that didn't have a deal at that time that you wanted to put under contract. So I'd say no on that one.
Let's do another one here. This one comes to us from Miss Lindsay, and she says, this may be inappropriate to ask, but after the accident, was Droz still paid? What kind of contract would he have had and for how long? Yeah, we've never really discussed that, but I'm sure WWE tried to take care of him. Do you remember any of the details?
Oh, yeah, we did. We took care of him. He got his contract paid in full, as best of my knowledge. So yeah, it was the right thing to do. In those moments, Vince had no issue spending money to help a talent who had fallen on bad times. And as far as Droz is concerned, he fell on bad times as bad as you could get. His career was over. So I don't remember all the details. I don't remember what Droz was making. I'm thinking it's probably in the 250, 300 grand range. But I know he got his money. And I think maybe subsequently, maybe even more than that. Because it seems like it didn't. I don't know. You recall, Conrad, did he do some online writing or something? Had like a little column or something. He stayed fairly busy as long as he could.
Yes. But
he was still paid. Yeah, he wasn't turned out to pasture because he had a bad break in a match.
Next week, we're going to be talking about No Mercy, of course, which means we are going to be discussing the WWE going public. We're going to be talking about Jeff Jarrett's contract. We're going to break down the actual pay-per-view. We'll also talk about Nash Bridges and Stone Cold Steve Austin. We'll be talking about Dream Stage Entertainment and how they tried to pay WWE to do some stuff at the Tokyo Dome. All that is coming up next week here on the show as we discuss No Mercy 1999. But before we put a button on this week's episode, Coach Rosie, who's with us here live as a part of our live studio audience, wants to know, Jim, how'd the movie premiere go?
Oh, great. Thanks for asking, Coach Rosie. I went out to LA First flight out, 6 o'clock departure, I think it was, on Saturday morning. It picked me up, took me to a hotel, nice hotel. And I'm trying to think of that little area. They're famous for their golf. But anyhow, we got some photos of that we'll utilize as we go forward, like right now. That was the cast. That was the cast right there, or part of the cast. You see, there's some, they had, we didn't have, Toni Storm was not there. She was booked. So we were not all in place, but this shot here was after the premiere was concluded, and we did a little Q&A with the audience. We had a good crowd. Had a real good crowd, as a matter of fact. So it's good. It's kind of cool looking up on the screen. There's Ash Avildsen. Ash is the brains behind the whole deal. He's the guy that I pitched about Queen of the Ring. I read the book twice, and he's a big fan. He and I have become friends. So his father was one of the most famous directors in Hollywood, John Avildsen. Successful as hell, famous, and Ash, following in his dad's footsteps, put together a nice movie. As a matter of fact, in the film, he had a little part with where he played Vince McMahon Sr. So he had a little cameo. He booked himself a little cameo. Jim Cornette has a role in it. He wasn't at the premiere, obviously. He would only come to the premiere if it was in Louisville, I guess. I don't know. But good crew. And Camille did such a great job. Her situation at the end was all important because look, she towers over these other ladies. But she had a big role because she competed in the last match that Mildred was booked in. There you go. See, I try to huddle up with these beautiful women, so it makes me look a little bit better. So, but she's a sweetheart of a lady. And she's another addition to AEW. We had Toni Storm's in it, Camille. I want to think Britt Baker's got a small role.
That's right.
So it was a great experience. And I think the movie's going to be out right after the first of the year in theaters around the country. So hopefully you wrestling fans out there in podcast land will check it out.
Queen of the Ring is the name of the movie.
Yeah, Queen of the Ring, and the book is called Queen of the Ring. It's written by Jeff Leen, Leen. It's a great read. To get JR to read it twice was an accomplishment. But it's a great read and a hell of a story. You got a single mom who married this whoremonger, Billy Wolf, who was in charge of all the women's wrestling essentially in the country. And he was a womanizer of nth degree. I remember Mae Young, who was not interested in men for obvious reasons. She told me one time that he was hung like a horse, but he couldn't get it hard.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. I mean, she knew all the shit. And Mae was, like I said, she was in a lot of those scenes, little blonde-headed lady. But she was the sergeant. She was what Monsoon was for Vince Sr. back in the day. So, but if you follow it and the history of wrestling, I mean, some of the more famous names in all of wrestling have roles or were represented more specifically in this film. So I think you're going to like it, folks. So it's a good wrestling movie. I admire what these women put their bodies through to make it work because they were not from our world. Now, some of them were, but they had smaller roles. The Mildred Burke character she had to learn to wrestle. And I asked her how long she stayed sore. She said for weeks and weeks, hitting the ropes and all these things, taking bumps. So anyway, they did a good job, and I wholeheartedly, of course, I got a dog in the hunt. I'm one of the executive producers. I'm going to get a little piece of the action at some point in time. We just got to create the action, and you guys can help us with that by checking it out, buying a ticket, go to the movies.
You can actually see it in Marcus Theaters in Minnesota this weekend. There's going to be a screening on Friday night at 8:15. Stay tuned. We'll have more information about Queen of the Ring in the coming weeks as we get more and more information. We've also got some information about a brand new show called Memphis Memories exclusively at adfreeshows.com. Most WWE fans remember him as Harvey Whippleman, but you may also know him as Downtown Bruno. And like so many other legendary names, he first made his mark in Memphis, and including a lot of other names, like the old Blue Chipper, as JR used to call him. Let's take a listen.
As someone who knows Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, what is his most defining characteristic to you as someone who knows him?
He's the same guy that he was when he was 14 years old hanging out with me. He's the same guy he was when he was 24 years old hanging out with me. He's not a Hollywood egomaniac or nothing. He knows where he came from. He worked his butt off to get where he is today, and he deserves every bit of it. I mean, he still goes to WWE and does things and draws money and makes money. And he's out there giving 110%. He's just a guy that came the right way in life. He's a good Christian man. He's got a beautiful family, lovely wife. His mama, I've known her for most ready to cry. I love her so much. I have to, wonderful woman. People don't understand. When people criticize Dwayne, it hurts me because he doesn't deserve criticism. He's a wonderful person. He didn't have to do anything he did for me. Of course, back then, I had no idea he was going to become the hugest star of the world. Not only in wrestling, but arguably in the world right now. Anything we ever did together because we were friends, And here's the thing. I want everybody to understand this, too. A lot of people put on these websites, I let him live with me. No, I didn't let him live with me. We lived together because we were best friends then and now.
Check it out. Memphis Memories, adfreeshows.com. It's one of many, many series that's exclusive to adfreeshows.com, including Lex Express, Pod Ain't Easy with The Godfather, The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbag with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, Television with Tully Blanchard, Learning Lucha with Sam Adonis, and now Memphis Memories with Downtown Bruno. Catch all this and more than 100,000 hours of bonus content exclusively at adfreeshows.com. And while you're plopping down and enjoying some of this great wrestling content, can I recommend that you get a little spicy, you get a little flavor, you get a little kick? Go get it at jrsbbq.com. That's where you can get the all-purpose seasoning. You got 2 different types of barbecue sauce. You got JR's very own hot sauce. How about main event mustard, chipotle ketchup? We got it all here. Dude, this is really, really good stuff. I'm a big fan of your products, and I still can't believe that you're hooking people up with signed books and cards and figures. I mean, below market value, and that's really what you deliver best at jrsbbq.com. Sure, there's sauces and memorabilia, but we're overwhelming people with value at jrsbbq.com, aren't we, Jim?
We're trying, Conrad, trying to make it affordable for everybody involved. And of course, Heckfire, we're still in the grilling season.
Yeah.
And where you and I live, more often than not, it's never not grilling season. It's weather friendly, so to speak, in Jacksonville, where I have a place, and here in Norman. So it's we're very blessed that the business has been growing and building well. We try to do a good job of customer service. Our products are not overpriced, and if they weren't good, we wouldn't be around this long. So if you haven't tried us, give us a shot, see what you think, and we appreciate your business very much.
And we appreciate your business here with us. We know that there's a lot of wrestling podcasts out there, but Jim and I have a blast doing this each and every week. And we hope if you're liking what we're doing, you'll go check us out at grillingjr.com. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. You don't want to miss us the next time we're live, but we will be talking the WWF going public, Jeff Jarrett's situation, the match with China, No Mercy as a pay-per-view, Steve Austin on Nash Bridges. What the heck is going on with Chris Jericho? And how is the WWF almost at the Tokyo Dome? All that and more coming up next week on Grilling JR. Be sure to tell your friends and join us next week right here on Grilling JR.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate your business and your support. You're very valuable to us, and we appreciate you so much. And sometimes those of us, like Conrad, myself, in these roles, don't say thank you often enough. So right now, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you right here again next week.
See you then. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.